The stadium was a blur of color and noise. Cheers bouncing off the metal bleachers, camera shutters snapping in rapid bursts, parents waving handmade posters like their kids had just won the Super Bowl. My robe felt too heavy, like it belonged to someone more deserving. And right as my name was about to be called, my phone buzzed, a text from Dad. 4 words. No congratulations. No pride. No acknowledgement of 7 years of work. Don't expect help. You're on your own. For a second the world stopped moving. The applause around me faded into a muted hum. I forgot to breathe. My fingers went cold, like my body was trying to shut down before the pain could reach me. I stared at the message, hoping it would transform into something else, something softer. It didn't. My name is Chloe Hart, and I grew up in a small town in California where ambition was treated like a disease. People believed in staying put, in predictable jobs, in living quietly. Whenever I talked about neural networks or computational linguistics, my relatives acted like I was glitching. I still remember Thanksgiving, trying to explain machine learning while carving turkey, only for my uncle to smirk. There she goes, talking like a robot again. Someone laughed. Someone else said, "Don't overthink it, sweetheart. The world doesn't run on algorithms." But the world did. And I wanted to help build it, so I worked. Harder than anyone I knew. Assistantships with barely enough pay to buy groceries. Late nights grading freshman assignments for students who would forget my name before finals. Freelance coding for companies that wanted Silicon Valley talent for community college rates. I never told my family how often I skipped meals. Or how many times I cried on the walk home because I didn't know if I'd make rent. And as I sat there clutching my diploma folder, every other graduate around me was wrapped in arms. Parents crying, siblings screaming, uncles lifting nieces onto shoulders. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. I sat alone, staring at a text telling me that I would be the only safety net I'd ever have. Jessica nudged me. She had been my only friend in the program, someone who always sensed the storm before I spoke it. "You okay? You look somewhere else." I forced a smile. "I'm good. Just overwhelmed." But she knew better. Dad always believed in teachable moments. Not warmth, not guidance, just lessons delivered like judgment. And this was his finale. A reminder that the degree I bled for meant nothing to him, so I tucked my phone away, smoothed my gown, and pretended I blended in with a cheering crowd. Because no one needed to know that behind the cap and gown I'd been living a double life. One fueled by ambition, fear, and the constant hope that someday, someone might actually say they were proud of me. But that wasn't the message that changed everything. The phone buzzed again, sharp and insistent against my palm. I almost ignored it, still reeling from Dad's message, until I saw the name lighting up the screen. My stomach flipped. David never called unless something serious was happening. I stepped out of my seat just enough to answer, voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, is everything?" His voice crashed through the line, breathless and electric. "Chloe, the IPO went live 20 minutes ago." For a beat, I didn't understand what he meant. My brain lagged behind, still drenched in graduation pomp and emotional debris. What? $6 billion. The number detonated inside me. Heat shot up the back of my neck, flooding my ears. I gripped the railing to steady myself. He kept talking, words tumbling out faster than I could process. "We're trending on every financial site, reporters are pinging me non-stop, VCs are foaming at the mouth." A couple of students seated behind me glanced up, eyebrows raised. I saw the question in their eyes. Did he just say billion? I turned away, hand cupped over the phone, but David's voice wasn't cooperating. "People are already calling you the youngest tech billionaire in the country." A girl 2 rows away froze mid-selfie. Another girl stopped cheering and nudged her boyfriend. Conversations thinned, stretched out, snapped silent. Jessica's head whipped around to look at me. "Chloe, what was that?" Before I could answer, another mic drop from David echoed into the world. "This is insane. We're everywhere. TikTok, Bloomberg, Reddit. Everyone's talking about you." Someone, a stranger, leaned forward, eyes wide. "Did he say billionaire?" I tried to sink into my gown, but that ship had sailed. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones lifted. Screens framed me. Jessica pressed closer, voice low, urgent. Chloe. Everyone heard. Everyone. I stood frozen, diploma clutched in one hand, phone in the other, while an entire stadium full of parents, siblings, and strangers recalibrated who they thought I was. In the span of one call, the double life I'd protected for 7 years collapsed in public view. If Dad's text had cut me earlier, what was coming next would slice through everything he thought he understood about me. And right then, through the crowd of murmuring spectators, I saw 2 familiar figures pushing through the bodies. Heads high, unaware of the financial earthquake they were walking into. My parents. They were 20 feet away now. My parents, cutting through the stands with the same clipped determination they used for every confrontation in my childhood. Dad's jaw was locked, Mom's eyes narrowed, both wearing expressions that said someone is about to be corrected. Before they could reach me, my phone lit up again. Maria, head of PR. I answered, forcing my voice steady. Maria. No preamble. Just urgency. Chloe, we've got a situation. The media is all over this. Business Daily wants a sit-down tonight. Live. National. Closed my eyes. Already. She exhaled, breathless and disbelieving. The valuation is now $6 billion and climbing. This is historic. We're breaking records we didn't even plan to break today. The word historic echoed through the stadium. Or maybe that was just my brain, short-circuiting under the weight of it. Around me, people weren't pretending not to listen anymore. They were openly staring, phones held up, filming, recording, documenting history in real time. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered. It went up again. Jessica's hands flew to her mouth. She looked like she'd just witnessed an asteroid hit campus. Maria kept going, firing updates like bullets. We need statements drafted. We've got partnerships reaching out from 3 universities. The inbox is exploding, and journalists are circling like hawks. You're going to be asked to speak for the company today. I rubbed my forehead, dizzy. Maria, I'm literally at my graduation. I know, she said, voice tight. But the world doesn't care. Your name is flooding every feed we can monitor. You're trending in 40 countries. 40. I turned. And for the first time I got a full look at my parents' faces. Dad's expression wasn't confusion anymore. It was a storm brewing. The kind of anger that came from losing control of the narrative. Mom looked bewildered, searching for context she didn't have. And that's when it hit me. My 2 lives were colliding. The one I built in silence, late at night, fueled by fear and grit and caffeine. A world constructed brick by careful brick. Was no longer private, no longer protected. It was being broadcast to a stadium full of strangers, and my parents reached me through the circle of spectators. Dad didn't lower his voice, even with 100 people recording. What on earth is going on? He was used to being the one with answers, the one who decided what mattered, the one who framed the story. But everyone here already knew the truth before I said a word. For the first time, I didn't shrink under the weight of his voice. Because for the first time, he wasn't the one holding the narrative. Dad didn't wait for introductions, context, or basic humanity. He stepped in front of me, blocking the view of the stage, voice low but sharp enough to cut. We'll talk now. Not can we talk. Not congratulations. Just a command that I steadied my breathing. Dad, this really isn't. He waved a dismissive hand, slicing through my sentence. You've spent 7 years on a PhD no one asked for, and now you're causing a scene at your own graduation. The words landed heavy, familiar. Jessica sucked in a sharp breath beside me, like she'd been slapped too. Mom stayed silent, eyes darting between us, waiting for instruction, waiting to fall in line. It was the choreography I'd grown up with. Dad speaks. Mom agrees. And I swallow explanations until they rot. That I tried one last time to keep things from collapsing. Something is happening with the company. I need to. Dad scoffed. Loud. Derisive. That app thing. You and your little experiments. Chloe, you're 28. You can't avoid real responsibility forever. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Loud. Obvious. Dad barked out a humorless laugh. Oh great. Another one of your little campus jobs calling. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in fury, but in exhaustion. The kind that comes from being perpetually misunderstood by the people who raised you. I pulled the phone out, stared at the screen, and actually laughed. Not bitter, just disbelieving. This was surreal. Dad frowned. What now? I didn't respond. Instead, I pressed speaker. Maria's voice blasted out. Bright, breathless, unmistakably professional. Chloe, it's exploding again. We're past 6.2 billion in valuation. Social's calling you one of the youngest self-made tech billionaires in the country. We need to finalize the foundation donation announcement, or the narrative's going to get away from us. Silence didn't fall. It crashed. Like someone pulled the audio out of the world. Every head in the radius snapped toward us. Phones lifted. Mouths opened. Someone, somewhere, laughed, the stunned, disbelieving kind of laugh people make when witnessing history without warning. Dad's face drained of color so fast it looked medical. Mom clutched her purse, knuckles bleaching white, eyes wide with a fear she didn't understand yet. Maria must have sensed the sudden void, because she paused. Chloe, are you there? I didn't answer. Conversations sparked like static around us. Did she say billionaire? How old is she? Did she build something? Maria continued, unaware of the audience. We have universities asking for partnerships, and your inbox is exploding. Congrats, by the way, this is insane. Jessica covered her mouth with both hands, eyes shining with disbelief, pride, panic, some mix of all three. Maria suddenly realized. Oh, God. Am I on speaker? I clicked the screen off. The silence returned, heavier now, thick with something irreversible. Dad stared at me, voice thin and trembling, not with power but with uncertainty. Chloe, what? What was that? For years he'd never asked. He'd mocked, belittled, dismissed, but never asked, and now, stripped of certainty, stripped of control, he whispered the question he'd avoided my entire life. What do you actually do? There it was. The question he'd never asked me in years. And for the first time, he asked it not as a man who owned the narrative, but as someone realizing he'd never known his daughter at all. Dad's question hung between us, flimsy and fragile. What do you actually do? I looked at the man who had sent me a text less than an hour ago telling me, don't expect help. You're on your own. And I realized he still believed I needed him. He still thought he was the safety net, the rescuer, the judge of legitimacy. I swallowed, then spoke quietly, so there would be no mistaking the words. I haven't needed your help for a long time. He blinked, confusion warring with something else. Pride, fear, denial all tangled in his expression. I don't understand. Of course he didn't. He never did. Every time I tried to tell you what I was building, every time I tried to show you progress, you shut it down. You mocked it. You shut me down. His mouth tightened. That's not fair. I shook my head. You never listened long enough to see what I was building. Mom's voice came out small, trembling, almost childlike. We didn't know. I met her eyes, soft, wet, desperate. Because you never asked. A ripple went through the crowd. Something like pity, something like awe. Dad felt it. His spine stiffened, shoulders squaring as if he could reclaim dignity by posture alone. But the truth was cruel in its simplicity. He wasn't the center anymore. He wasn't the authority. And everyone here knew it. His eyes darted around, uneasy under the gaze of strangers capturing every second on their phones. Chloe, he muttered. I don't. I pulled out my phone again, opened my banking app, and scrolled to the recurring transfers. Transactions that had never had a name attached. Just a routing number, a silent lifeline. I held the screen out. These were me. All of them. Mom covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Dad leaned forward, squinting, as if the truth might rearrange into something less destabilizing if he stared hard enough. You paid these, he whispered. Rent, medical bills, house repairs, debt payments, the small emergencies they never wanted the world to know about. All quietly handled by the daughter they assumed was failing. I figured, I said, voice steady, if I ever told you, you'd say it wasn't real. That it wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough. Dad flinched. Not visibly dramatic, just a tiny movement like being hit somewhere bruised. "You always told me I couldn't take care of myself," I continued. "So I figured you'd never believe I could take care of anyone else." Mom's tears slipped down her face, silent and unguarded. Dad stared at the screen like it might explode, like money had become a detonator, a truth bomb rewriting the past in real time. I took a breath. Not triumphant, not vicious, just honest. "You thought I was chasing some childish dream." My chest lifted, steady and unashamed. "I built a real job." I looked at both of them, broken by the truth, rebuilt by it, and finished quietly. "I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth." And finally they couldn't look away. The sound hit before the sight. Boots, wheels, and voices barreling toward us. Then, suddenly, cameras, microphones, and flashes exploded into the quad like a storm cell dropping from a clear sky. "Chloe Hart! Chloe! Over here! Can you confirm the IPO numbers?" Security rushed in, forming a loose perimeter, palms up, herding stunned graduates and their families away from the chaos. Dad flinched at the first flash, instinctively throwing up a hand to shield his eyes. For the first time, the attention wasn't directed at him, and he wasn't ready for what it felt like to be in someone else's story. A reporter thrust a microphone forward. "Are you officially a billionaire?" The words punched the air, loud enough for the entire stadium to register. Dad turned slowly toward me, as if the question itself was a physical force he couldn't outrun. His expression, collapsed, bewildered, stripped of certainty, was the frame-ready moment. The thumbnail moment. The one the internet would screenshot, meme, caption, analyze. The face of a man realizing his helpless daughter was something entirely different. I could have soaked in it. Could have smiled, smirked, savored the reversal. But this wasn't a revenge fantasy to me. This was truth. I stepped forward, voice steady enough to cut through the chaos. "The company I founded reached a valuation of over $6 billion. Gasps rippled across the crowd. A few students literally clutched their caps. I kept going. "I'm independently stable and have been for years." A reporter, smelling a headline, jumped immediately to the next angle. "How do your parents feel about all this?" Every camera pivoted. Every microphone lifted. The question became a weapon, one I could easily turn on the people who had underestimated me my entire life. But I didn't. I inhaled, choosing grace over humiliation. "They're here today. We're all still processing. I know they care. And I know they'll understand my work one day." Mom was openly crying now, shaking beneath the weight of both pride and regret. Dad's throat bobbed, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what to say." I turned toward him, not triumphant, not cruel. "You don't have to say anything right now." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was mercy. Security began ushering us away, shielding us from the crowd, the cameras, the noise. Behind us, reporters shouted, demanded, speculated, but none of it mattered anymore. The power dynamic was gone. Not because of money, not because of headlines, but because truth finally had a voice. Revenge isn't violence. It's clarity. Security led us away from the cameras, away from the buzzing questions and flashing lights, down a corridor behind the bleachers where the noise thinned into wind and footsteps. Out there, in the quiet, the moment felt strange, almost hollow, like the adrenaline had drained out too quickly, leaving only the heaviness underneath. We found a bench. Dad sat first, elbows on knees, hands clasped together like he was praying. Mom stood beside him, eyes red, mascara smudged, looking more human than she had all day. Neither of them looked like they were preparing a lecture. For the first time in years, Dad cleared his throat, voice unsteady. "I owe you an apology." He paused, swallowed, corrected himself. "A real one." I blinked, because I'd never heard those words in my life. He stared at his hands as he spoke. "I thought I was pushing you toward stability, toward something reliable. I didn't realize you'd already built more stability than I ever had." There was no defensiveness, no justification, just uncertainty, something I had never seen on him before. Mom lowered herself onto the bench beside him. "We were wrong," she whispered. "About your work, about your strength, about everything." The remorse didn't magically erase the years of hurt. It didn't rewrite the past. But for the first time, their voices didn't make me feel small. I sat beside them, letting the silence settle before I spoke. "I'm not angry," I said. "Just tired." Dad looked up, eyes glassy. "Tired of being treated like I don't know what I'm doing." I exhaled, shaky but honest. "I just wanted you to see me." That landed deep. Dad nodded, slow, deliberate. "We do now," he said softly. "And we're proud of you." He shook his head, almost desperate to be clear. "Not because of the money. God, not that." His voice cracked. "Because you didn't give up on yourself, even when we didn't understand you." The words didn't feel like a grand gesture. They didn't feel rehearsed. They just felt true. And that alone shifted something in my chest. No dramatic reconciliation. No sudden healing. Just the fragile beginning of accountability. We stood eventually, awkwardly, walking back toward the ceremony grounds. Together. Easy. Imperfect. But not pretending anymore. The world outside was still loud, still chaotic, still rewriting our names into headlines. But the space between us was different now. Not enough to erase what came before, but enough to change what comes next. Their remorse didn't erase the hurt. But for once, I didn't feel invisible. Chloe stepped back into the sunlight, blinking against the warmth, feeling the ceremony buzzing around her like a current she wasn't quite part of anymore. The applause, the cameras, the whispers, they were still happening, still swirling, but something inside her had gone very still, not numb, not detached, just clear. For the first time, she wasn't shrinking to make someone else comfortable. She wasn't folding herself down to fit the small version of her parents' expectations. Polite, predictable, acceptable. She had spent years trying to earn pride they were never ready to give. Years mistaking their fear for wisdom, their control for guidance. Years thinking that if she worked hard enough, sacrificed long enough, they would finally look at her and say, "We're proud." But standing there, in the middle of crowds and chaos, she finally understood something simple and devastating. She didn't need their permission to succeed. She never had. All she ever needed was the courage to stand as who she really was. Unapologetic, ambitious, messy, extraordinary. The real victory wasn't the IPO or the valuation or the number of zeros attached to her name. The real victory was being seen, if not by them, then by herself. Her parents might never fully understand her work, her world, or the magnitude of what she built. But that didn't make it less real. It didn't make her less worthy. Success, she realized, was only powerful when defined on your own terms. Not theirs, not society's, not anyone else's. And if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, if you've ever been told you're too much, too unrealistic, too different, then you're not alone. If this resonates with you, drop a comment below and share your story. And if you want more stories about resilience, success, and proving the doubters wrong, hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me, what would you have done in Chloe's position?